This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
All right, Jerry and Bob, let's get this session back underway. So, you're sitting at the Blood Eye Tavern, the roughest thieves' den in the city, having some drinks. Various unsavory patrons, killers, cut purses, even a few guild assassins move about, and everybody's like eyeing each other down, right? Like who's the baddest ass person in this room? You can literally feel the tension. It's like an undercurrent, right? Permeating like the entire room, like underneath all the music that's playing and all the hushed whispering that's going on at the various tables. When all of a sudden this like really large, intimidating figure falls right onto you, Jerry, apparently like slipped in a puddle of ale on the floor, and his tankard of mead just like spills right on the table, splashes over the two of you. What do you do?
I get a hold of him and I stand him up.
Yeah, he looks pissed.
I dust him off a little bit. I say, "Hey, are you all right?"
Are you like getting into flanking position or something?
Sir, you tripped and fell on us. Are you okay? You didn't hurt anything in your fall, did you?
Yeah. So he like looks at you and he's like, no, I'm all right. Sorry for falling on you and spilling my drink on you and your friend.
No worries. It happens to all of us.
Oh, thank you. That was really kind of you. Hey, are you guys
Yeah, who isn't?
Well, then, would you mind if I sit down and tell you about a job I recently came across?
Right now, take a seat.
And with that, welcome to the 395th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast, where tonight we are going to talk about getting that murder hobo mentality out of your games. And then we'll head over to the conversation corner, talk about what's going on in our lives. But first, my name is Phil.
My name is Jerry.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
Woohoo!
Who forgot to hit transition to show everybody the video when we went live.
Okay. Did people hear us at least?
I'm guessing they heard us.
That's a dope opening. Like,
anyway, shit was dope, yo.
Anyway, this is one thing, right? Where we talk about one thing going on in our lives.
One thing.
Bob, tell me how you're doing on the MCU quarantine challenge.
Oh, that's a thing?
I just today I'm officially, because I know now like 2 or 3 people doing it. So as of today, we're just going to start calling that the MCU quarantine challenge.
All right. Well, I decided that I was going to work my way through the MCU again. Schmitty was doing it first, and they're up to, I believe, Winter Soldier. Today, I knocked out Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America, the First Avenger. So I'll be finishing up Phase 1 tomorrow and jumping into Phil's favorite movie, the first movie of Phase 2, Iron Man 3.
It's not
you
my
don't
favorite.
like Iron Man 3?
Here's the thing, right? This is I paid a ticket to go see the movie about Iron Man. I wanted to see Iron Man, right? But like the whole like middle of the movie, I'm just seeing Tony Stark.
But that's the whole point.
I know.
Yeah, don't watch season 2 of Iron Fist whatsoever.
Yeah, see, that's my right. So, all right. So here's the point, right? I actually don't have a huge problem with Iron Man 3. It's a perfectly fine movie. Iron Man 2 is way worse than Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
Except for Justin Hammer, who's awesome. But I do have a huge pet peeve about superhero movies where superheroes lose their powers. Like I bought the ticket. I bought the ticket to see the superhero, not see them lose their powers. So I'm I'm very happy that happens very infrequently in the MCU. And don't get me wrong, PTSD, Tony, is actually a really important element of the Marvel, especially of the first phases of the Marvel Universe. I do like to joke, though, that that's my big complaint about Iron Man 3 is that I paid to see Iron Man. Why am I getting an hour of Tony Stark, fighting in a kitchen with a microwave, right? Like, anyway.
Well, remind me in the after show to tell you my Iron Man 3 story, but I don't want to ruin it here. I don't want to take too much time here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Some of you have heard this already. So
anyway, so the MCU Quarantine Challenge, Bob, is underway. You can join Bob by just either in the Slack room or on Twitter, just letting him know that you are also part of the Quarantine Challenge, and just list out the movies as you get them completed. I don't know if I can do that challenge. I don't actually have a lot of free time. We'll talk about that in the conversation.
I don't either. Yeah.
It's not as much free time as I would like. Anyway, Jerry, what about you? What's going on?
I finished both season 1 of Tiger King, which is a ridiculous train wreck of a show that I could not stop watching. But more importantly, I watched season 1 of Happy, which turned out to be a very different show than I expected. It is, if you haven't seen it, it is dark and funny. It's a really interesting crime procedural. Has what I think are probably the best choreographed fight sequences on regular television. It's not what I thought it was when I saw the ads. It's basically a cop who's been disbarred and is basically down on his bottom rung, and he's drunk and vicious and kind of just a loser. And he's so drunk that he starts hallucinating and seeing the imaginary friend of a little girl who's been kidnapped. And as he slowly but surely gets the morals to go after her, and everybody is trying to kill him, things get interesting and dark and really, really funny. Patton Oswalt plays the imaginary friend, and it's really good. And there's at least one really good like set piece, knockdown, drag out fight in every episode. When it's 6 guys with hand axes against him, and you realize that they're completely outnumbered because they're only 6-1. It's a good fight. So,
nice.
It's a lot of fun. It's a really fun show, and it was. I was watching other things at the time and watched the first episode, and that just took over what I was going to watch for the next couple of days. So, how about you, Phil?
Well, I got my I had my Forbidden Lands game on Sunday. This was Roll20, obviously Roll20 Zoom 20. I think I'll just call that for now. It was my Zoom 20 game. I thought it went really well. Actually, we got to use the initiative cards in the inside Roll20, which was great because the folks at Free League, I had reached out to them on Twitter. The folks at Free League sent me the PDFs of the cards. I exported them out to PNGs, and then from there, I created a custom card deck in Roll20. So now it works. Like I can actually hand out cards to all the players, and we can do our initiative. So yeah, we had a good game. We are doing our first dungeon crawl in Forbidden Lands, as they are exploring the vault of the previous king who owned the ruins that they're currently renovating. So we had a very interesting and actually fitting for tonight, since we're going to be talking about non-murder hobo stuff. I'm going to actually save the example for later in the episode, but we had a moment where the players were being attacked by a swarm of rats. And we're on their way to murdering all of them. When Sean managed to come up with a way not to murder them all, which was really interesting. And, we made some rolls in the game and let it ride out. And it was good. So, Forbidden Lands is going strong. That was session 19. So we've been playing that game for a while. And I'm just at the point where we're getting ready to start after this dungeon crawl intros the big campaign that'll be the arc that kind of encompasses the rest of our play.
Nice.
So pretty psyched about that. Cool. All right, so those are our three things. On to some announcements. Let's talk about Con of Champions. And this is a fundraiser to help tabletop events. So that is very important. I want to go to the site. I believe this con is going to be May 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
Oh, wow.
They are well on their way to their goal. They're trying to raise $56,000. They've raised $26,000 already. But this is this fundraiser, this online con, is to raise operating capital to keep tabletop events alive for them to get through this pandemic, because obviously they derive most of their income from conventions, and well, we're not conventioning right now. But we are eventually going to someday go back to conventions, and small conventions really need this software. If you've been to any kind of small convention, tabletop events makes it so nice for registering. QCC has used it in the past. I really like it. I've used it for other conventions as well. And they can't function without operating capital. So this is a way to raise that. There are several different ways to help. So you can buy a badge and go to the virtual convention. You can volunteer to run an event at the virtual convention. So if your online game chops are getting sharper, like mine are, you can offer up to run a game. You can sponsor a perk. There's this whole list of perks that you can sponsor by just putting some money towards that, especially if you're a small publisher. I know we're going to be looking at it from Encoded to see what we can do to help. And then the other thing which we're doing right now, which is promote this virtual convention to our listeners. So we're letting you know about it. We're going to have a link in the show notes. There's already a link in the Twitch stream. So you can go look at it there. But it's going to be a big old online convention with a great cause to keep a great piece of software and its developers afloat. Bob, what's our other announcement for tonight?
There is a new Kickstarter for a Tales from the Loop board game.
Yep.
Which is, unfortunately for me, bad timing because I'm up to my eyeballs in board game Kickstarters already.
Yes.
But it looks interesting. Of course, it's based on all the fabulous Simon Stalinog art. So if you're interested in Tales from the Loop and you like board games, you might want to check that one out.
It's a co-op, right? It's a co-op for 1 to 5 players. And you play through mysteries.
That's cool.
And there'll be at least 4 scenarios, including the base game. Although more will be unlocked as stretch goals are unlocked. Mm-hmm. And this is Free League, so one can say with pretty good confidence, and I can say this because I've backed a Free League or 2 Kickstarter. They are excellent, right? Like their quality is excellent. Their customer service is excellent. They deliver like as close to on time as technically possible. So this, to me, this is a sure thing, right? Like if you're like, well, I don't know, I like Tales from the Loop, but I don't really back board games. Like I would back these guys. Like this is not speculative backing, right? This is like, you're going to get your thing.
Yeah. And the quality
I think
is probably going to be pretty good. So.
Oh, yeah. Quality would be excellent. They've already cleared, right? So their goal, I think, was just shy of 50,000 US, which I think is like a $500,000 kroners or whatever. I forget the currency, but I would have done it in the correct currency, but my webpage translated it for me. So they needed about 50,000. They're at 95,000. I think it just launched today, right? So expect this thing's going to blow open. This is going to blow open stretch goals, and like you're going to get a lot by the time this thing's done.
Cool.
Without a doubt. Like this is definitely like I said, this is definitely a sure thing, and I believe the entry level is $60. Take a quick look. Standard edition is $60. All right, there's a deluxe edition that's at $99. And a retailer level. That's it. There's just 3 levels, right? You get the standard edition, the deluxe edition, or you can get a bunch of them because you're a retailer. I don't think, like, if you're interested and you have funds, you can't go wrong. This is absolutely like sure thing. So cool. Good stuff. I like those Free League guys.
Oh yeah.
Good stuff.
It looks like the big difference is that the deluxe edition, all the miniatures are painted, and you get honorable mention in the game.
Oh, well, that's neat.
It is.
Yeah, that'd be good for me. I suck at painting minis.
Yeah, I sympathize there. I'm not a mini painter either.
That is not a... I say I suck, but I also haven't done it like in 25 years, so I don't know. I don't think I'd be good at it. I'm pretty sure that's true. So I'll leave it at that. Cool. All right. Are we ready to roll on to our feature segment?
I think we are. Are you ready for a workshop?
Is this a workshop? It is a workshop. Are we doing the bumper?
Yeah. Of course we're doing the bumper.
The bumper I can't hear, but I need to just wing it anyway.
It'll work. Trust me.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Ready?
Workshop. Don't be murder hobos. Don't just go around killing things and taking money. Do better. Be better players. Be better gamers. Be better characters. Workshop.
Don't suck.
Sweet. Hold on, let me take a sip of my coffee and soothe my throat. Cool. Tonight's topic has come up in a few different places. For me personally, it's come from running recent fantasy games where a lot of the material in the game has these like murder hobo moments, either explicit or implied in them. And then watching my players approach them in very non-murder hobo manners, which got me thinking that besides the idea of murder hobo being a trope, it can actually be an assumption in the way encounters are designed. And so that brings up the question, like, what if your group is not a bunch of murder hobos, right? How do these tropes and assumptions change within games? And so tonight, I thought we'd talk about that. I thought we'd talk about the transition, right? Like, how do you either transition your gameplay into kind of a more non-murder hobo, or how do you change the material you're running, right? From that murder hobo mentality to something different.
And to do that, Phil, I think we all know what murder hobos are, but can you define it for us?
Oh, they know what that means.
Yep.
Behold, you are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Okay, so let's first look at the word hobo, right? Which Wikipedia defines as a hobo is a migrant worker or homeless vagrant, especially one who is impoverished, right? It's a term that comes from the late 19th century out of the Northwest. Murder hobos, and I do not get to say this quite often enough on this show, as defined by Urban Dictionary.
Yeah.
Murder hobo is defined by Urban Dictionary as the typical protagonist of a fantasy role-playing game who is a homeless guy who goes around killing people and taking their stuff. The term originated in discussions of tabletop role-playing games by authors seeking to create games aimed at styles of play not supported by traditional games like Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, again, hats off to Urban Dictionary for a definition I could use on this show.
like I say, we could probably get in the Urban Dictionary in the after show a few times.
Yes, yes. There are a few things I want to pull out of this Urban Dictionary definition. So first of all, the word protagonist, right? We are talking about the, quote, good guys of the game, which are often the players. And again, we've talked about in the past, there are some easy tests to figure out if your players are good or evil. I will simply say that the Goblin Baby test remains the ultimate test for alignment. You will always know your player's alignment if you use the Goblin Baby test. Okay. The other next part of this is the word homeless, right? We are talking about players who are not rooted anywhere and have no ties, right? We've all played these kind of characters. It is pretty much the default character from the 80s. But we've all had this kind of character, right? Basically the wandering swordsman, that kind of thing. And then the last part I wanted to talk about was killing things and taking their stuff. And I'm just going to shorten this to kill loot, right? And this is the main activity for the characters, right? Kill things, take their stuff. So the core loop in Murder Hobo play is find something to kill it, take its stuff, increase in power level, travel to new location, and repeat. Right? That's pretty straightforward, right? Roaming around from adventure to adventure, murdering things, leveling up, getting some magic items so that you can go murder bigger things, get better things, level up again. Okay.
Yeah. Well, this character concept isn't new. It's been around for pretty much since the RPG scene started. And it's not just limited to fantasy games. When you think about it, people like the Cowboy, the Ronin, the Solo from Cyberpunk, and later on the Street Samurai, they're all non-fantasy examples of murder hobos.
Yeah, we see it incorporated into and we also see it incorporated into every layer of games.
And there's also things we see in settings themselves. The settings can set up the design of a murder hobo. For example, Forbidden Lands has a world that was isolated until 5 years ago, and it's full of ruins and dangers that now have to be explored.
It's interesting. I'll just interrupt because I wrote that line, but also the game allows you not to do that. You are more than welcome to travel around the whole world and just explore things. But it also has a whole section for creating a stronghold and actually anchoring yourself in a place as well. So it actually gives you both modes of play.
Well, much of actually a lot of players out there are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons Adventurers League, and that's been the model for many of the early books. Where basically just go in, kill stuff, move on, go in, kill stuff, move on, get enough loot to level up and go from there. So it's built into the settings themselves in a lot of times. But it can also be built into the situations that occur. For example, Dungeon Crawl Classics. The whole purpose of Dungeon Crawl Classics is designed so the players are supposed to be exploring dungeons. You build characters. The first adventure of every campaign is always what they call the funnel, where you go into a dungeon and kill things and try to get enough loot to level up.
The ones who survive, right, are rewarded.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Which apparently are never my elves.
So, yes.
And finally, we have the mechanics of games. There are games that derive experience points from killing monsters. There are games that make magic items that are only accessible through taking them from monsters. And there's a game design where violence is the core mechanic for solving your encounters.
Yeah, and a long time ago, we haven't done it recently, but a long time ago, one of the things we talked about was you will know what's important in your game by the number of pages dedicated to it in the rule book. So if you have an entry for diplomacy that is 3 paragraphs in your skill section, but you have 20 pages dedicated to combat, hint, this game is about killing things, right?
Sure.
Go ahead.
When I worked for Dark City Games and we were doing Legends of the Ancient World, that was one of the problems, was that there was a page on skills, there were 4 pages on combat, and out of those 4 pages, there was a page and a half on grappling.
Right.
Which told us a lot about, because 2 of the writers were had martial arts training in their past, and they thought that grappling was more important than swordplay.
Do you like watching grown men wrestle? Okay.
I'm not going there at all. Not with that group.
Right.
All right.
So the point of all of this about the setting, the situation, and the mechanics, right? If we're referencing Jason Pitt's structures, the point is that this mentality can be pretty pervasive in RPGs, right? And to be honest, especially if you're an older gamer like we are, like you are conditioned to this core loop as like being totally normal. Like, you know, go find a dungeon. Let's go find some goodies, right? Like, I remember the first time I played Ebron and was able to go to an artificer and buy a magic item. I was like, whoa, like, I don't have to go kill somebody for a thing. Like, I could just like take some gold, which I did get by killing people, but and buy an item. Like, it's different, right? Like, you notice it like immediately. Okay. So how do murder hobos become a problem, Jerry?
Well, it becomes a problem when the true murder hobo style of play gets into becoming the main part of the game. When it gets out of control, when we look at the consequences, or more specifically, when there's lack of consequences for being a murder hobo. And this is going to stem from two different issues. One is the morality of the game, and the second are the consequences that occur in the game itself. A group who has no morals, they have no value for life in the game, and they can end up leaning hard into this trope. These are your players that have characters that just kill everything. You know, the shopkeeper ends up being, won't give them what they want, so they just burn the shop down with the shopkeeper and his family inside, that sort of thing. And they end up taking the kill loop mentality into every aspect of the game.
Yeah, it's pretty much like you said, right? So it starts with something simple, like we're going to kill these ogres threatening the town and get some cool treasure. And then, like, that makes sense to the players, right? But then later, right, like, they're just like, boy, I like this bar, and the owner won't sell it to him. So it's like, guess we're just going to have to kill the owner. Like, you know, zero morals, you know, kicking it.
It's the baby goblin thing again, where they just kill everything they can because something's worth experience points.
Right.
And we see this a lot in the younger, less mature gamers. Also see it in the older gamers who haven't matured as well, that haven't ever gotten out of that mentality. And so it tends to be part of a vicious cycle that goes through. Because many of us engage in this kind of behavior at some time. If you grew up playing games in the 70s and 80s like Phil and I did, this was the design of games at the time, and they're written to be that way. Like
I mean, I remember playing Star Frontiers, right? And like, and I'm sure this was true for Traveler as well, right? Like, spaceships are expensive, so the fastest way to upgrade your spaceship is to go steal somebody else's. Yep. Like, preferably board them, kill them, take their ship. It's a route to success. Right. So
Star Frontiers actually did a better job of not having that as much of a problem. So you played the game as core. You were working for the
UPF,
the United Federation, the UPF, and they would just give you whatever you needed for that particular session.
Yeah, it was when Nighthawks came in. When Nighthawks came in, you could make ships. That's where, you know.
That's where there's no problem.
Coveting those ships. So anyway, so morals is definitely one part of it, right? The other part of this is consequences, right? Consequences are what the game world will do to the characters when this kind of behavior is inappropriately engaged, right? And most games have some line, either explicitly or implicitly, where this behavior is acceptable and where it's not.
Yeah, for example, in most Dungeons and Dragons design games, killing the monsters in the dungeons is okay. Killing the townsfolk is generally frowned upon.
Right. And so consequences are actually like kind of a safety net, right? So if the players aren't going to have their own morals, right, the campaign world will reward and punish certain behaviors.
Like, you clear the dungeon, you become a hero. You kill a townsperson and you run out of town or worse.
Right. And this right there has its own problem, because that's moral relativism.
What it basically means is you killing or looting from one group are perfectly okay, but killing and looting from another group is not. and this is honestly a future topic that's way too big to get into here, but it can cause problems in the game itself.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is its own thing to unpack, and I don't even know if we are the experts on which to unpack a topic of that magnitude. But that is an inherent problem, and it's a huge problem about the consequences regarding murder in games. So we'll leave that there. Just note that that's a problem. So consequences are also sometimes difficult to enforce with players, especially if a game has a power curve.
Because it's one thing for the local sheriff to punish a few first-level characters, but much less likely to pose a threat to a party of 15th level characters.
Yeah, I mean, like when you're first level characters and the sheriff's like, I'm gonna beat all of you guys and run you out of town. Like, that's the thing where you're like, he's got a club. I got 6 hit points. He's got a 1d6 thing. I should be careful. But at like 15th level, when the like level 4 sheriff is like, I'm gonna run you out of town, you're like, power word kill.
Yeah. Our wizard can sneeze and kill you, buddy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, we're just going to let the wizard with a dagger take you, right? Like, so consequences are not a guarantee for creating or maintaining morals in players/characters, right? It is more of a punitive step that the GM uses to try to reestablish some level of control or some sort of threshold in the game, right? You can't really teach players, with consequences to behave themselves, right? No. They either inherently do or don't. Right. Okay. So when does this become a problem?
Well, it becomes a problem in the style of game we have. And to be truth, we see this kind of common in not just role-playing games, but also board games and video games. To some extent, we live with this in all of our games. When it becomes a problem is how comfortable we are with it in our games itself.
Yeah, I mean, I have tons of video games where grinding through creatures to get more stuff to level up. I mean, side questing, right? Side questing is exactly what, this is about. So the thing is, right, when we talk about comfort level, right, it's a personal choice and it's different for each person in each group, right? So for some people, they'll write this off as like, well, it's all make-believe and it's escapism. So I don't think twice about murdering everything from a dungeon, like to get loot or upgrades, right? They're just they're very okay with that. For others, they may not have an issue with it, providing there's a morally justifiable explanation, right, for why they're going to do this. So, something like a rescue mission, right? We're going in this dungeon to rescue the mayor, or the targets are evil or clear and present danger. And again, this gets into that moral relativism thing, right? This is that slippery slope. Again, a topic way too big to touch in this episode. But some people are okay with that, right? You give them a little bit of justification and they're like, okay, cool. I can, I'm all right with it. And for some people, like, this style of play is not cool at all, right? They don't like it. And that is also perfectly fine.
Well, that's important because in an ideal case, if everybody's on the same page, then our play is going to be harmonious and it'll progress. But the issues are going to come in when we're not all on the same page. And it's worse if our expectations are not properly aligned.
Yeah, right. So this problem creeps up when somebody in the group has a different point of view about how murder hobo they can be, right? So, this is when somebody's like, you're talking about, it'd be great if we got the bar or whatever. And like one player like is like, cool, I get up and kill the bartender. Right. And everybody else is like, dude, we were talking about just, going and getting a whole bunch of treasure to like pay, to buy it off of him. And he's like, right. And like now immediately, like everybody's like all over the place. Like, you can't kill the bartender, like roll that back, X card, whatever. And it's going to lead to conflict, right? Again, I mean, in almost every case where we have issues with expectation setting, we wind up with conflict, right? Because somebody believes the game goes one way, everybody else believes it goes the other. And then that's conflict, right? It's that gap. Which can then, going back to our previous episode, this is the kind of thing that can knock you out of productive play, right? Yeah. you're in the middle of a dungeon and a goblin surrenders, right? Depending on your level of murder hobo, there could be a intense discussion about what to do with said goblin prisoner. Let him go, tie him up and leave him in the room, kill him. And now you've dropped out of productive play, right? So this is part of why this is a problem, is because when we're not in alignment, we lose productivity. And then the worst case is that it actually leads, it escalates to character PvP, or worse, it jumps the table and we hit the player level, and now people are upset. I've seen all of these.
Yeah.
I've seen absolutely every one of these in my tenure as a GM.
We had one almost derail our Eberron campaign about half a year ago because of something like that. So it's not new, and it even comes out of experienced gamers from time to time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is why it's important that we discuss this sort of thing in session 0 discussion, and to set the best expectations, and also let the GM know what you're looking at, because we're going to discuss GM roles in this in a few minutes, but that's just as important as the player roles.
Yeah. So for the rest of the segment, we're going to dedicate how to move away from murder hobo games.
Mm-hmm. We're going to, if you're playing a murder hobo game and your group is all on the same page with some expectations, then just keep doing what you're doing and enjoy it.
Right. I mean, to be honest, that's our DCC game.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of high thought in our DCC game. And while we play many games without a murder hobo mentality, DCC is like the one game where we all just kind of lean into it and we're just, trucking through dungeon, killing things and taking their stuff. Granted, the writers of those adventures write some pretty bad things in those dungeons. Like
the vast majority of that stuff you want to kill.
Yeah,
they don't leave a lot of gray area, but
No, they give you that necessary moral high ground.
Yeah.
Like this thing's an elder god that's gonna wake up and kill things or whatever. Like you're like, it's rarely like this is a piece. Actually, I'll say this: I've never seen an adventure where it's like this is a peaceful community of kobolds that are into pottery and whatever, and you're just gonna go in and slaughter them. It's always like, this thing is like, the demigod of eyes that's like lurking below these caverns, like kind of thing. So, but we do.
Now that being said, the President Adventure started out with them assuming we were murder hobos, because it starts out with you hear a guy tell a story in a bar, and before the party acts, the game tells you follow him out to take his money and beat him up, and
you wind up not doing it, right? Because the guy trips and falls.
Somebody else does it, yeah.
Right, he trips and falls and drops a scroll, and you steal the scroll. But you're right. You're absolutely right, right? It absolutely assumes this kind of murder hobo mentality. And I remember when I went to run it, like I had to stop, and I was like, what exactly kind of party are you? Right? Like we had this talk, like I was like, because that was where I was stuck. I was like, well, how are we getting into this story? Are you guys okay with just being like, whatever the hook is, Phil, we're taking it, don't worry about it? Or do I need to do a little work on my part to make the story more compelling, right? Like, can I make it sound like whoever's in those caves is ripping people off, and now you're going in like with a justification, like we're going to stop these grifters and thieves kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it turned for us when we found the room full of bones and skulls with no eyes on them. That's when we realized, okay, these guys were actually bad and we were okay. Because up until that point, we were still thinking, are we the baddies?
Oh, not me.
Yeah.
When we walked into that thing and the guy says, oh, yeah, you can get your wish granted. Just put 1,000 gold pieces in the bowl. And I'm like, if I had 1,000 gold pieces, my wish would be coming true already. All right? So I don't need your wish.
All right.
Yeah, so I just saw that. I just saw that as typical churches in game. That's pretty much it. But anyway, but that's all murder hobo as it goes. You could have the game designed that way and you just play around with the hook.
Right. Exactly.
It's fun.
So how do we get away from murder hobo games? Right. We're going to talk about a few different avenues that we can go down. Right. And we kind of did a little bit of it already, but we'll tease these out a little more. So we're going to list some here. And then we're going to talk more about it in the second half of the segment when we roundtable. We'll talk a little bit more about some of these techniques as well. But here's some things you can change. What's the first thing, Jerry?
You can change your players. Find players who want to play something that are not murder hobos. And you can find that out by looking at your game group. Maybe your game group isn't meshing well because half the group wants to be murder, death, kill, and the other half wants to talk to the kobolds. Mm-hmm. And some players are going to be into it. Some aren't. And you're going to know that after playing a few campaigns. And finally, you really can't change anything else we're going to talk about until you decide that you get the players that want to do something different. If they're all dead set on being murder hobos, nothing else we talk about is going to change this.
Yeah.
And if you want to run a game that's not about murder hobos, you may need to find a different group.
Yep. I mean, that's the harsh reality part of this, right? If you have just some hardcore players who are like, you know what, all I want to do is roll in dungeons and murder things, take their stuff. I just want to play that core loop. Like getting into anything else with them is like, it's an uphill struggle. And if I know anything from my 20s, my arrogant 20s, is that you cannot GM change into people. Like you can't make better gamers by GMing them to be better. That is a topic for an after show or something else. I don't think it's worthy of a show.
That's a topic.
But I don't know if it's show worthy, but it is definitely a do not, right? Of the cardinal do nots as a GM. Do not attempt to condition your players into better players through game. Okay. Another thing you can change is you could just change the game you're playing, right? So there are plenty of games that don't have murder hobo settings and don't have murder hobo mechanics in them or situations. So just go get one of those games, right? And go play that game. I think we talk about some a little later in the segment, but like there are plenty of games that don't have that setup, and you could just play that. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. You can also change the setting and the situations. There are lots of games out there that have open settings and broad situations, and you can create them to be non-murder hobo. The first thing, though, is give the players home and roots. Give them something to care about, and this will go a long way. And then second, you need to create a situation where kill loot is not the primary way to become more powerful. And third, design the storyline if there are other means of acquiring the goodies the players like. Townspeople give them the sword that will slay the demon. The fixer outfits the punks with the cool gear for the mission. We talked about in Star Frontiers. You need something, and your patron group gives you the spaceship you need or gives you the resources you need. And as a result, they're much less likely to kill just for the gear or the goodies because they're getting it from another source. Yeah,
absolutely. Like if you have access to mission gear, then you don't have to murder your way to take it from somebody else. Not lastly, there's more. There's more. Good. Next one is encounters. In general on this show, we recommend not scripting the solutions to your encounters, right? Don't present a problem. Don't ever come up with the solution, right? Your players are there to come up with the solution. Now, and if you're running games with combat encounters, make certain that the characters don't have to loot along the way, right, to overcome the objective, and be open to non-violent options, right? This is a thing that actually in the last, this is a thing in my Forbidden Lands game that keeps coming up that catches me off guard, and I'm noticing it and turning into it where the players take a non-violent option to an encounter, and I'm like, yeah, do that, make a roll, or use this resource. Let's do that and see what happens. So be open to those non-violent solutions, right? Don't paint the characters into a corner where violence is the only way out of it. Right. Not every room of goblins wants to fight. Some of them may want to negotiate. Some of them may just want to be bribed, right? Like give them a few gold pieces. They'll be ecstatic. But if you set up an encounter where it's like you open the door and 5 goblins pick up their spears and point them at you, like the way you're narrating it is you're telegraphing to the players, like, I mean for this to be a violent combat, right? Whereas, I can describe that room differently in a way that they still pick up their spears, but I could say they look trepidatious, or some of them are holding the spears clumsily, or they're shaking, right? And you can open up opportunities, right, for other things to happen in the game. All right, what's another thing you can change?
You can play around with the alignments and morals and codes. For example, if your game has moral structures, you can limit which ones can be in play. For instance, and this is how I run all of my games, you can have a no evil game. You can play any alignment, but not evil ones.
Yeah.
Or chaotic neutral.
That's also fair.
But seriously, but seriously, you could just say, listen, we're running a no evil game. I often tell my players when I'm playing a game that doesn't have alignments, listen, you guys don't have to be the equivalent of lawful good, but you're going to be the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to be the good guys, but you're going to be the heroes. So there's going to be certain lines you're not going to cross, and there's going to be certain motivations that it's assumed your characters have, and the adventures are going to be based around that. And so design your characters along that line. Don't build somebody who, I only want to create death and I want to be the next avatar of Kali or something along that line. So you can just put that in, and once you say that,
my goal is to get Kali's attention. Like, no, wrong. Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm in love with death.
Yeah, and I am definitely one. I am definitely one for the no evil campaign. I have no problem. I have no problem at this age of being like, nope, no evil, no Sith games, nope. I'm totally very okay with that.
Remember what happened when you tried to run a demon game in
Nomine?
In Nomine?
Oh, it's awful.
Now, something to bring into this. If you have a player who has a problem with that, this is a time as a GM to ask them, what is it about playing evil character that you want? Because they may just want something that they see as being evil. That like, I want to stand up to the man. I hate authority. Okay, great. I can have a campaign where the man is the bad guy.
Oh yeah.
So when you get this, you if you get a large enough player group or a new player group, you may get the player who says, but I want to play evil. Find out what they are. Now, if they come up with, well, I just like to have no consequences and I want to, kill babies and murder goblins all the time, well, then just tell them to go find another game group.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Like, defining what is evil, right, is definitely a Section 0 kind of thing to do. And yeah, you're absolutely right. If I had a player who was like, look, I want to fight the man, I'd be like, cool. Guess what? The man is lawful good, right? Like the man is like, they're like, it's restrictive. It's whatever, right? Like I can do that. Like, that's like, I can get you that and still make you the good guy. That's not a problem. In fact, in most cases, the man is almost never actually good.
Now, the other exception to no evil is DCC games tend to go that way. They tend to be written so the players are fuzzy gray at best.
Oh, DCC's got some. Well, DCC doesn't actually have good or evil. They only have law and chaos. But there's a fine line about law and chaos in that game. Okay.
There is.
So cool. Right. So the last thing we can do is we can adjust rewards and experience, right? And by experience, I mean, one, what they get to do, and two, the currency, right, of actual experience. So players who become bored and aren't getting the clues or rewards they want or need will often go murder hobo, right, to spice things up, right, because they're trying one route and they are not successful. So in a passive aggressive way, they may just escalate and be like, well, I'm just going to start murdering things till I find out what I want. Or I'm going to start torturing everybody in this house until somebody gives me a clue, right? That's usually a sign that something's off. That's the kind of thing that as a GM, like if you're watching your players and reading your table, you can head this one off by just handling frustration. And then lastly, what I'm going to say is about actual tangible reward, like reward is currency. And we've talked about this many times in some of our garages and stuff. Whatever the currency is of your game is how your players will play to it, right? So if your game system gives out experience points for killing monsters, it is telling the players go kill monsters. DCC, on the other hand, a game that you would think is about getting experience points for killing monsters, is actually about getting experience points for surviving encounters.
Yep.
It does not say, and I think it even says in the book, you do not have to kill everything to survive an encounter. You have to engage the encounter, and you must survive the encounter. But whether you negotiate, whether you bamboozle them,
and that does include running away eventually.
It does include running away, right? So
as on many occasions.
Right. So it opens the door for creative solutions, right? It goes back to that thing about encounters shouldn't paint you into fights, right? Sometimes they do, sometimes we all do it. We do that. And sometimes, there are many ways we cannot do that. All right. So as we've reached the midpoint of this segment, we have examined the murder hobo, the challenge it presents to the game, and talked about some ways to shift your own play style away from it. We're going to check in with the chat room and see what they have to say. But first, Bob's going to tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network.
Absolutely. Bone, Stone, and Obsidian is a show in which Wayne and Robert take monthly deep dives into the Dark Sun setting and discuss it across all editions of D&D. So if you need your Dark Sun fix, this is the show to listen to. Check it out.
All right. What is going on in the chat room?
So we had a comment earlier by Ange, which we have covered, where she asked, what are some techniques you can use to give your players some good action scenes when trying to avoid encouraging murder hobos? So we kind of touched on that already. Because if they're not getting the activity that they want, then they're going to lean into the murder hobo.
That is something to keep in mind, though, is that there are games out there that have combat as one of the core mechanics, and GMs who run games where there's no combat can end up with, or very little combat, can end up with players who end up murder hoboing because they're not getting that action fix that they want.
Yep.
And it's not just clues and mysteries and things, but can also be, hey, I've got a fighter and I built this character around killing stuff and doing big physical feats and knocking down doors and that. And this is the third adventure in a row where, we end up walking into a bar and talking for the next 2 hours. You need to make sure that, because that can be another player reaction. And it's not completely unjustified. If you came to the game expecting an action sequence and you don't get action, that's a problem.
And again, right, this is expectation management, right? This is very much your session zero kind of stuff, right? Where we're talking about what is the play of this game going to be like, right? So, Ange said it best. If you give me a magic longsword, I better have a combat where I can use it, right? Absolutely, right?
The other part go ahead.
I was going to say, we're not saying that combat in games is bad, right? Like we all run games with combat in them.
Absolutely.
Right. What we're saying is, especially for when we're talking about murder hobo, really we're focusing on kill loot, right? That kill loot cycle. But agreed that when we have a mismatch in expectations, nearly something always goes awry, right? Whether it's passive aggressive player behavior, whether it's escalating player behavior, right? Which is somehow we get into these murder hobo situations, that kind of thing. But you can head some of these off if you know you're going to play a game with a whole bunch of negotiations and talking, and somebody makes the ultimate tank who has no intimidation skill or whatever. That character's painted themselves in a corner, right? And so as a GM, you have to sometimes be able to say, like, that's a cool concept. It's not going to work in this game.
Yeah, that would be a session zero failure if you let that go through and that's all that character brings to the table.
Right.
Yep.
This was actually...
The other thing is making sure that if you have a game where combat is a possible option, making sure that it's an option players can use and make sure they understand where their consequences are. Because if you play a game where, yeah, sure, you can fight, but every time we fight, something bad happens, the players stop trying to fight.
Yeah.
And then the player who did design a character in a game where they were told fighting was an option starts getting frustrated as well because, well, if we're going to get arrested if we fight anyway, we may as well just kill everything and get some money out of it. And I've seen that happen in especially con games. but I've seen that happen in games where there's a line there. So it's part of game design. But I think these are all facets of the same thing. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I when I was designing one of the playbooks in Hydra Hackers, as it turned out, when we started playing Hydra Hackers, social skills became really important in that game, and I kind of knew they were going to be, but I didn't realize how important they would be. And because there's a move for anyone to negotiate in the game, and then there's a playbook that's actually better at negotiating.
Yeah.
But the Neighborhood Watch originally did not have a social skill, and what was tough about it was people liked the idea of the Neighborhood Watch, but there are whole games where no one fights anyone. And one of the playtest comments that came back was like, I really dig this playbook, but I didn't actually get to do anything in the, I didn't get to do anything that was on my playbook. So one of the moves, and it's one of the beginning moves for that character, is they have an intimidating presence. They use their body in place of their self when they go to use the move to negotiate things. And then that immediately gives the player, who's essentially the frontline fighter for the game, it gives them a chance to go a whole game without having to actually beat anyone up if it's not necessary, and yet still be completely effective in the game.
Yep.
And that was a thing that's a thing that I actually had to fix, because it was a playbook that was designed to go whip some ass in a game where whipping everybody's ass is not always the best idea.
Yep.
There are times for bursts of violence, but a lot of times there's like a whole bunch of like lay the fuck low, right? Before the water authority shows back up. Okay. Any other comments?
Hydra Hackers being, first, I see Hydra Hackers being a lot like a Call of Cthulhu game. If violence is occurring, you done fucked up.
I mean, there is a thing, and when I intro the game and I show the pictures, I have the pictures of the water authority. I do say, like, if you see a water authority enforcement officer, right, like the dude in all the armor with the railgun, I'm like, you should be running, right? Like, that's a sign. Like, at that point, evasion is your best friend.
Yeah. Because if you think you're going to stand toe-to-toe with them and try and take them down, it's not really going to go well.
No, it actually tells you right in the it just tells you right in the game, like, they're designed to murder you, and they don't take prisoners. Like,
and they don't care.
They don't care, right? Like, there's very few, and I'm upfront with that, right? That's stake setting, right? Like, that's like, look, these guys don't arrest a lot of people, and they don't get audited for it.
Yeah. Right.
So looping back
out in the chat room. Are you going to be the chat room, or?
Yeah. Looping back to when we were talking about if you're all your players want to do is murder hobo and you're not into that, find new players. Similar thing with if you're going to find a new game that does something different. Ange made a good point. Be upfront with them. Tell them why you're stopping the current game, rather than just going and just cutting it off, especially if you're going to let the players go and go look for other players. Be like, look, you guys want something different than what I want, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do my thing. And I just hit my mic. I have to put my hands on my head. It's the first time I've done that in a while. I'm talking like an Italian again. I got my hands going.
I'm half Italian. I'm with you. I got my hands in the pockets of my sweatshirt just to try to slow me down.
But, always, again, back to the setting expectations. Senda had a game where they session zeroed that they were going to be seafaring pirates, and then they ended up playing in a desert.
Yeah.
So all your characters have skills for seafaring, and you're wandering around in the freaking desert in the sand. It's like,
and if your GM thought they were being clever, that goes back to my first rule, right? Don't ever be clever.
Don't ever be clever.
Yeah. And
unless you're Shipwreck. Unless you're Shipwreck from G.I. Joe, right? The only guy who can, pilot a sand skiff in the desert. Like,
well, Ange made the same thing. And at this point, I'm not even saying I'm gonna go out on a limb here. If you're pulling that kind of stuff on your players, you're not a good GM. You're just an asshole. at that point. I'm going to say
I can't argue
I'm
that.
sorry.
I don't have any way to defend that. I've tried to be that, like, I've tried to be clever at times in my GMing career. It is almost always out of ego, right? Like, look how smart I am, which is always a terrible way to GM, right? You should never GM from a position of, like, I am better than all of you.
Well, yep, because or worse, it comes back to what you said earlier. I've seen GMs do this, and I think I've probably done it myself, where it's, ooh, I'm going to show them how to play ABC by making them not be able to play the characters they designed.
Yes,
and that,
yes, exactly.
That's the enforcing change, and it's never a good idea.
Do not condition your players, right? Do not use the game to make your players or characters into different or better, quote, better people. It is bad. It is bad. I remember I did this in my 20s. Like, I absolutely know I did this in my 20s because I said it one day to somebody, one of our players in the game. And I realized at that point, I was like, wow, I have gotten carried away. I gotta walk this back. Right. Like, it's not, I had a lot of control problems in my 20s. Not proud of a lot of the things I did in my 20s in general.
You have evolved well, so.
I have learned to let go of a lot of that. I would say, before we jump back into this, I would say that now the best way to describe my gaming style is the same philosophy as servant leadership, right? Like, my job here is to make everyone have a good game, right? Like, that's, I'm here to facilitate that experience, not to show you what a cool plot I can make or what a cool story I can write, whatever. Like, none of that matters to me. What it matters is, like, that you are all coming together to have a good time together, right? That we're not, like, as a group. Anyway, that may be one day a future topic.
Yeah, put a pin in that one.
Yeah.
How do you want me to word that?
The role of a GM as being benevolent manager, not egotistical tyrant, and take it from there.
Yes.
No, because being a man, I was always told that being a manager, your job is not to do your employees' jobs. It's to make it so that they can do their job better in a way that's not taxing to them.
Yep. I mean, my first rule for every project that I lead is I am the firewall between you and upper management. You do not have to talk to upper management. It is my job to go in and negotiate with them. It's my job to talk to them when it's not going well. It's my job to tell them what a great job you did when it is going well, right? There's a little Bear Bryant philosophy in that as well. But yeah, there's a little bit of Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs was the person who firewalled groups away from things. And that is very much my job, right? Like,
I'm here the buffer between them and the management staff.
And Andy wants to know, what about egotistical manager?
I'm telling you,
that's the 20s.
I'm telling you, the best thing you can do if you want to be a GM is empty your ego. Like, if you are GMing from a place of ego, it's not going to work the way you think it is. Like, you need to empty your ego and come to it as humbly, and I'm here to help. Like, roll up your sleeves. What can I do to make this game experience a good game experience for you? Be it safety, be it content expectations, giving you the things you want. Hell, even softening a rule if, like, there's a thing you really want to do and the rules don't quite do it. What can we do here? Yeah. Like, where can we find some ground to make that happen? Like, that's the kind of game I'm running now. Anyway. That's good. I like that. That's a good side. Hint somewhere down the line that may wind up as a future topic when it tickles my fancy again.
All right. Before we jump back into the main topic, I just want to bring one more thing around.
Please do.
Again, we are not saying that there's anything inherently wrong with playing a murder hobo game.
Nope.
If everybody's on board with it and that's the kind of game and everybody's cool with it, rock on. Have fun. That's awesome.
Yep. We're not saying
else.
we're not saying wrong, bad fun.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
No,
we're saying that we're saying that when you are not aligned, there's a problem. Like our DCC group, which is a group of excellent role players, all knows what that game is about.
Oh yeah, we murder hobo the shit out of that.
Right, are all on the same page with it.
Yep.
And we just play that game face up for what it is.
Yep. Yeah.
But then, like for instance, when we play Forbidden Lands, that group is very different.
Yep.
And it has almost all the same players.
Same bodies, yeah.
It is a subset of the DCC group plays that game. And it is a very different patterned game because our expectations for how we play that game is actually very different than how we play DCC.
All right.
Good. I'm glad you brought that back up because I don't want people to think like, and again, you know, it's an ego thing. If you think like, well, I'm better than you because I don't play the murder hobo way.
That's not.
You're an asshole.
Right. I mean, to be honest, the reason I moved away from murder hobo things was that like I get kind of squicky at zero moral games now. Right. I don't like the world when it has zero morals. I don't like when my role-playing games have zero morals, right? The reason I moved into a game with some sort of moral compass is because I think there should be one in life. Yeah. And that's a preference.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even when you look at video games where you have technically no moral compass, like Fallout 4, okay, where you can pretty much play, there seem to be much better rewards for being the good guy. And you find out fairly quickly on which groups out there are either the Nazis or the science assassins or just the cannibalistic raiders and slavers. And yes, there's a murder hobo mentality of, oh, look, it's a bunch of raiders. We get to kill them because they're there. But they're also, if you don't kill them, they're going to come and hurt the people that you become friends with.
Well, and that's the moral piece you need in order to be like, well, they're a clear and present danger. I need to put them down.
Yep. But you could play that game where you become one of the cannibal raiders and enslave all your people. Just I don't ever like to play those games. Yeah, but at least but the rewards are better by playing the good guy. And you see this something built in.
And you see this when video games have like decision trees where like you could do the right thing or not. Like there are a lot of people who will be like, "Oh, I'm just going to totally do the right thing," right? Like they make a lawful character in a game where they could be any alignment because it fits who they are. Yeah, exactly. Like when I was younger and was more nihilistic, like I was the kind of like. I was way more evilish in my game choices and things like that. But, as I've grown older and, I don't know what the progression is. I don't know, been a parent, whatever. Like I don't know. It doesn't do it for me.
Yep.
No. So.
All right.
Nice. Good. Cool. All right. So getting to the second segment, our roundtable discussion about murder hobo play and how to move away from it if you so desire. Let's start with the following question. As a player or GM, what do you do to move the game from being murder hobo? Like what are your like techniques? Like what are the things you do?
Well, as a GM, the first thing is create encounters that reward nonviolent solutions. Things like mysteries, contests, exploration, where there's a reason for the players to not have to kill things off. Some settings do this better, but you can do this in any game. Sometimes you have to delve into the rules a little bit. I know Phil and I joke back and forth about Savage Worlds being the game where you punch everything in the face, but Savage Worlds has lots of skills that are investigation. They have good heist mechanics and the like. But it's still a game where the main mechanic is punch people in the face. But you can design lots of games like that. And also give better rewards for resolving situations without murder, death, kill. Sure, you get experience once you're killing the kobolds, but you get experience points and allies if you don't kill them. And then the kobolds can come back and help you at a later date. Use that as a reward so the players have a reason to not just go out there and kill everything. Next, give them NPCs that they want to help and protect. Not just because they're weaker, but because they're friendly. Give the players a reason not to ignore or kill NPCs they encounter. And then in that case, later on, there will be a reason not to just go murder, death, kill, and everything around them. And have the consequences for killing things indiscriminately. You know, they might not be the biggest fish in the pond, but if they start killing things indiscriminately, maybe when they go to town, nobody will do business with them. They can't find anybody to trade with. People just give them all their money, but there's no money left to be had because nobody wants to help them. You can design encounters where the abilities of players can still be used in useful ways. If somebody wants to play the big burly fighter, design an adventure where being big and strong and knowing about weapons and being an ex-mercenary are useful to the encounter. They're going to go in and negotiate. Well, maybe this guy that they're negotiating with has some relation to the military unit the fighter was in. Or maybe part of the mystery involves moving a big bookcase that only the fighter is strong enough to move. Give them something to do so they don't just run around murder hoboing. And lastly, as we said before, murder hobo play often evolves when the players are lost or bored or feel inadequate. If you're a player and you're getting to that point where you're just feeling, you know what, I don't know what to do next, or I'm feeling, tell the GM. Either say it right in the game or post it, hey, you know what, we really haven't had a fight in a long time and I'm getting a little bit antsy here. Or I know this is a murder mystery, but we don't have any idea where we're supposed to go. We haven't picked up any of the clues yet. And that's when the players get bored and start torturing people to get information. So those are some things you can look at. How about you, Bob?
So when you're a player, don't be afraid to suggest a non-murder option to your fellow players. Okay? Not everybody thinks as quickly on their feet as others, and somebody may be sitting there going, I can't think of any options other than just kill these guys and loot their shit. And you go, oh, we could trade some of the stuff that we found in that other cavern to these kobolds because they like shiny shit. And maybe
candy,
we can
man.
get the
They
information.
like candy.
Yeah, candy. There you go.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, you suggested an option that maybe spurs the other player to come up with their own option, which is different from yours, but might be even more fun. So you can't don't resign yourself to, well, we're just going to do what we're going to do, and I'm not going to suggest anything because whatever. Like, work the table, talk to each other. And if everybody looks like they're all just like, oh, we're just going to go in and murder make a suggestion because they might not have thought of anything good. Or what they thought of, maybe they didn't think, it was worth saying. And your suggestion goes, oh, sure, my option is totally worth saying now that you said that. So, it's all communication, as usual, is a huge part of that. So,
yeah, none of us are as smart as all of us.
Exactly.
Yep.
Very good point.
Yep.
So I got two. One I just came up with as Jerry was talking, so I'll just mention it really quick before I do the one that I wrote down. So one of the things, especially if you're relatively early in the game or you've brought in a player new to the game in an established game, is before you hit them with consequences, even if the player doesn't understand it, their character often understands what's right or wrong in the world. So you can be like, let's say they draw a blade on a patron in a bar. You could be like, hey, before we get into combat, I just want you to know, your character knows that getting into any kind of fight with a bladed weapon in the city limits is punishable in the stockade, right? Like fist fighting and like clubs and things like that are often overlooked. But if somebody stabs somebody, like the town guard comes down really hard on that. You don't have to you don't have to do that thing that GMs, especially when I was younger, would do where the players have no idea that that's true, even though their characters have lived the whole lives in their city, right? And then they stab somebody and you're like, oh, the constable's coming to get you. And they're like, what, why? And be like, oh yeah, no, city ordinance, right? Like you can't stab anyone. So that's like an established city, like a setting. But like even if the players are new to a setting, right? Like they could draw blades and like have a patron just say like, or even the guy they're fighting is like, look,
like, whoa, buddy,
I want to kick your ass, but like I don't want to go to the stockade for it. And if we draw blades, we're definitely going to the stockade. So put your blade away and let's just do this with, fists or club or something. Like if you don't ambush your players with consequences, right? Like, it is okay at a meta level to tell the players the consequence of their actions before they take it. This way they're making an informed decision, right? So, if they're like, no, screw it, I'm going after him with my knife, then you're like, well, here come the consequences. As opposed to if they hear that and they're like, oh, no, wait, I want to back up. Can I draw like my, can I break the leg off the table and threaten this guy with a leg on the table or something? Be like, yeah, totally do that.
And again, if you're like vehemently opposed to breaking immersion by saying something at a meta level, then use another patron in the bar or the person that they're fighting. Yep. Give them the in-game version of that so that you don't have to worry about breaking the immersion. But don't just gloss over it you gotta give them the information.
Yeah. Also, in addition, right? Like, there's some setting things you could have dropped. Like, first of all, as they're coming into the city, the town guard might have been like, "Hey, don't unsheath that sword, otherwise you're going to the stockade." Right.
Important point.
Or the other one is the bar may not want you knife fighting in the middle of it. Like, oh, if you're drawing blades, go out in the street because I'm not getting my bar closed down.
Yep.
Right.
Like, those are in-game ways to convey that same info. All right.
Honestly,
so the other, go ahead.
Loop that back to the players too, where if you're another player and you're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be going all stabby on this guy. You could be like, hey, we're new in town. We don't know what kind of ordinances they have. So maybe you want to stop and think before you get all stabby on this guy just because he pissed you off.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, the GM could be like, cool, make a knowledge check. Or,
there you go.
Oh, cool, you know what? This town worships Cord. Like, they don't stab each other, they wrestle.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's how they solve problems here. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the other one I had, the one that I originally had the answer for this is, don't punish players for nonviolent solutions. And what I mean by that is, if your players encounter a bunch of goblins and negotiate a passage, right? So they give them a couple coins or something, and they broker a deal with the goblins. Don't 2 scenes later have those goblins ambush them and attack them later in the dungeon. Because all you've told them is, well, you can't trust anyone by nonviolent means. So what you're completing, right, the psychological loop you're completing is, well, we see goblins, better just mow them down. Last time we tried to negotiate with them, they screwed us over.
Yep.
Right? So
that happened the Shine Tower campaign we were playing online, where the GM, like, every time we let somebody surrender, they would show up again and attack us, talking. So by the third encounter, people surrendered, and we just slaughtered them. We're like, once you draw a blade on us, you're dead.
Yes.
You're dead. That's it. Once you're
right,
fighting, and no survivors ever.
Right.
And the GM didn't figure out why for another 5 or 6 encounters.
Exactly. Right. So this is that loop, right? So if you let someone go, just take them off the board, right? Like, they're gone. You dealt with the situation. But yes, if you it's that, I can't sum it up better than that, right? 2 times you get screwed over, and after that, you're like, well, I guess we're gonna have to proactively slit some throats. Welcome to Murder Hobo Land.
Yep.
Right? And then you got to start wondering, when people surrender, are you the good guys? Right? Like, now there's an exception to this, a slight exception. If you are playing a supers game and a bad guy surrenders and you put said bad guy in superpower prison, later bad guy will get out of superpower prison.
And he will come and screw with your shit.
Right. Because that is just an established trope of that game.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to do that, right? Like, you're supposed to let that happen, and that's okay. But to Jerry's point is exactly correct, right? It is the worst. It is the worst conditioning you can do. So if you want your players to have the option to use nonviolent solutions, when they solve an encounter, they solved the encounter.
Yep.
It's done. Those goblins take their shiny gold coins and run off somewhere else to, buy snacks or food or whatever, get drunk or whatever. They
might even show up again later and help you.
Yeah.
Yes. I was waiting for a pause. That's perfect, Bob. That's exactly it.
Bring them back around and be like, do you have more gold coins?
Or you're in a big fight with somebody else, and you're like, oh, man, these guys are pretty tough. And all of a sudden, those goblins come around the corner and are like, hey, those are the guys that gave us money.
Right.
Let's help them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So very much so, if you're trying to move the needle away from Murder Hobo, then don't loop those things back at them.
Yep.
That's not going to help anyone. All right, Jerry, what's our question number 2?
Well, okay, my next question is going to be, what is your favorite game that's designed for non-Murder Hobo play? Phil?
All right, so I'm going to name the one that I didn't write first. So my favorite is Tales from the Loop. I absolutely love Tales from the Loop. It is a game that has plenty of action, tension, mystery, but you're little kids. So like you don't murder people in that game, right? In fact, kids don't really get that. Like they can get hurt, like they can get unconscious and break, but no one actually even dies in that game. So I love it. And it's a totally enjoyable one-shot. It's a totally enjoyable campaign. Tales from the Loop's magnificent. The other game that I will say is definitely not a Murder Hobo game is Hydro Hackers. Hydro Hackers is not made for you to conquer the Water Authority. In fact, there's very little chance you can actually defeat them head-to-head. It is a game about stealth and guerrilla tactics and things like that. So it is very much a game about playing for your community, right? Like one of the things I don't allow in that game is you don't steal water for profit.
Oh, yeah.
Like that is just not a part of this game. Like you don't go and raid a corporation and be like, cool, we'll sell this money back to the neighborhood. Or we'll sell this blue water back to the neighborhood. Like ick, gross, no, not in this game. Like in every other Cyberpunk game, sure, just not in Hydro Hackers. In Hydro Hackers, you are part of that neighborhood. You are using water to keep your friends and family alive. So yeah, definitely not Murder Hobo. Jerry, how about you? 2 games that are not Murder Hobo.
Okay. I would start with superhero games in general. Villains, Vigilantes, Face Rip, Marvel, Masks. In V&V, they actually discussed right in the rules the idea that stealing from villains was wrong and that you weren't able to just keep gear you had and all the consequences that happened. In Marvel Superheroes, the Face Rip version, there's a mechanical consequence for stealing from villains. You lost karma, and karma was your experience points. If you committed crimes like that and you stole from them, you lost some karma.
You know my joke about
somebody. If you killed somebody, you lost all the karma. And if you were in a group that had a group karma pool and you killed somebody, all the group karma was gone too. So there was a very strong mechanical impetus to play the good guys. Go ahead, Phil.
As you say, you know my favorite phrase about this, right? When playing Wolverine, karma for red, right? Like just take all your karma points on your first roll and just push your first roll, your attack roll to red and kill somebody because you're not keeping those karma points anyway.
No, you're not.
Yeah, don't hold on to them. There's no point.
Yeah. The second game is a violent game, but just the way they do things. Barbarians of Lemuria. Gear and loot are abstracted. They don't really have coins in that. The characters don't really keep track of loot. And there's actually a mechanical bonus at the end of the game by not having any loot left. You actually role play and talk about how, once again, you're all out of cash and what you did to be in that point. Your motivation might be wine, women, song, and fame, or wine, men, song, and fame, if that's what you're into. It's good either way. But you can play that as you go, and the game is designed so that you get extra experience points for not having any loot left at the end. And so because of that, there's not much of an impetus to get every little coin out of something. You're looking for the big treasure at the end, but you're also looking for, rescuing the prince before he gets sacrificed, or stopping the big horror from beyond, or talking the noble into giving you a new ship or whatever. That's the rewards that you're looking for in the game. And so even though the game is built around being big Conan-esque barbarians, a lot of the game mechanics and role play comes from all the ways that you're doing other things in the game. And because it's all the same game mechanic, you can do lots of cool things without having to kill people. So it's a good game. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, so I completely agree with like H2O and Masks. Those are two that I would have picked for sure. I want to throw another one out though. Swords Without Master. If you stop and think about it, that game's not about killing and looting for goodies. That's about being awesome, right? And showing how badass you are. It's got a different loop.
You certainly can have so the game has no dearth of combat, right? Like you definitely can have combat. But yeah, it is more of a game of cool tales, and it is actually, Swords is really interesting in that it is really wide open to how you play it. It does not have a murder, it does not have a kill loot loop in it, which is great. Nor does it have an experience system. So it's also good in that respect. It definitely handles combat, but the way you narrate into that, and again, the way you narrate out of that, right? Because you don't have to necessarily. A perilous phase is not combat. A perilous phase is that your lives are in danger. And that gives you a lot of latitude. Yeah, it's good. I like that.
Senda nailed it pretty much. Swords Without Master is about telling an epic story.
Yes.
There you go.
Now, you could tell an epic murder hobo story.
You could.
You could, but that's not what the game's really about. Cool. All right. Last question in our roundtable discussion. In a one shot, because I like to sneak in some panda questions here and there. In a one shot, what do you do to avoid murder hobo play when you're playing with strangers?
Start the game out by having an NPC explain the consequences of murder hoboing in that universe, and be clear about other solutions. Don't be vague. You tell the players flat out that there are other options, and show them the consequences that, hey, you guys are all playing, special ops members of, the Y-Files, and, we're trying to be secret here, so you can't go around just shooting people. Plain and simple. And, All right. How about Phil?
I mean, I think you nailed it on the head, right? Like, I think you don't even be vague about this, right? You just do it straight up in the introduction of the game. So a thing I do now, and I started doing it with Hydra Hackers, but I've done it with games since then, is I actually, in my prep for a convention, I outline how I'm going to introduce the game so that I make sure that I kind of hit all the important things, like the tone, any special mechanics. Like for Hydra Hackers, I explain a few mechanics like after character creation before we start playing, that kind of thing. And like, I just say it outright, right? Like I just say right in the beginning when I intro Hydra Hackers, I'm like, look, this is a game where maybe no violence occurs, right? Like we're going to be doing a heist today and maybe no one gets hurt. Not that it's not going to be exciting, but violence isn't always the answer to the game. And I think that's very much, I think it's your best way to start, right? It's expectation setting. The one I will add to that is that it doesn't hurt if your description for the game, when people go to sign up with it, if it doesn't hurt if that also is pretty clear, because if your description for the event is come dungeoneering with me, right? Like somebody shows up to the table like, well, gonna get my murder hobo on today. And then you're like, this game is about, not murder hoboing. And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Right. Like now that person doesn't know, should they get up and leave? Should they stay and play through? Whatever. So where possible, where possible, as many places as you can kind of set people up for setting expectations, you should do that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah. Expectations, communication. You gotta talk about that stuff. And to bring it back around to what I said before, you're sitting in a one shot. Don't be afraid to make a non-murder suggestion. Somebody else at the table may not be, may not be thinking the way you're thinking, or they may be, somebody it's a con game. They're not super comfortable with a group of strangers, so they're feeling a little timid or whatever. if you make the suggestion, that will be the signal that they might be able to open up and make their suggestion of what they think they want to do as well. And, you know, bring the table alive.
I'm going to tack one more onto this, just so that we have something different than all of us agreeing with Jerry, which is not wrong because it's exactly the number one answer on the board, right? Is communication. Then I'll put another one on there, which is if you are doing pre-gens for your game, make your pre-gens versatile.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So if you're making the tank, like let the tank also have negotiation or something else. Like make sure that you have not created characters that only point towards murder hobo play.
Yep.
You want to give your characters those opportunities, right? So because if a player's looking at their character and somebody's like, we should negotiate with them, and they're like looking at their character sheet going, I can negotiate with my battle axe, right? Like, because all I got is my battle axe. Then it doesn't have anything for them. But if they look and they're like, oh, apparently I have some levels of diplomacy.
Yeah.
Like I maybe I could do that.
My character has the aspect, if it's still moving, I'm not doing my job. I don't think I'm helping during this negotiation.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly it. I think designing pre-gens for a one-shot is its own little topic. Yeah. But I agree that to bring it back to Phil's comment earlier about
pin that one. That's a
ding.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It was already it was suggested in the forums.
Okay, good.
By somebody.
Was that somebody
yes.
Okay.
To bring it back around to Phil again, though, his comment earlier, talking about advertising your game, one of the best things you can do is when describing your game, end with in the blurb, end with a comment like, you know, a D&D 5e adventure of mystery and exploration, or, you know, a Hydro Hackers, a dark future game of negotiation and dodging the man. You know, if you add a little phrase in there that describes everything but combat, players reading that will see, they sit down at the table, oh, this is a game of exploration and mystery. So go from there.
Yep.
I think it's excellent. I think it's a fantastic point. The faster you can convey it and the sooner you can convey it,
and absolutely lure in the murder hobo players with a murder hobo description that says, get your murder hobo on here. We're going to stab shit and steal their stuff.
Yeah, and that's also
what you're looking for. And you see that description, that's the game you're going to sign up for.
Yeah. Also, I mean, that's absolutely the case, right? It is, again, and really all we really want, right? The whole point of this topic is we want players to come to the table wanting to play the game that we're setting out to play, right? So the better we can communicate that, the better they can make their decisions about it.
There you go.
So, cool. I think that's an excellent way to wrap up our topic. Again, in summary, right, Murder Hobo is not exactly a bad form of gaming, but if you're trying to move away from it, we've talked about ways to move away from it and ways to kind of open up opportunities in your game. We talked about looking at, some of the places where it can become a problem. And a lot of this really can be fixed by just kind of setting expectations and all kind of being on the same page with the game that you want to play. And with that, let's go check out the chat room one last time, and then we'll bounce over the conversation corner and talk about life and stuff like that.
So a bunch of people definitely clued into that comment about Barbarians of Lemuria ending up where, like, well, we're all broke again. And it's like, that's totally Firefly, Cowboy Bebop. That's and that is a very enticing scenario for a lot of people.
I'm reading Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells, and one of the things in it is that every time you start play, you are 1d6 credit rating lower than you were last time, and then they give you a random table, like have the players either come up for an explanation why they blew a whole bunch of cash, or roll on this random table to see why they blew a whole bunch of cash.
Nice.
Yep.
It's like, well, we're in a pinch. Let's go do something and try and make some cash.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it self-feeds that, it self-feeds the core loop of the game, right? So if you get wealthy, like, I mean, to some extent, Blades in the Dark does this too, right? Like, you're supposed to go get wealthy because you're supposed to go put it in your stash.
Yep.
Right?
So
because
you can retire.
Right, because the game's supposed to end one way or another. Either you take on so many scars that you have to end, or you reach the end game condition, and you're going to want to have money socked away for your eventual retirement, because there's an epilogue to your character built into the game. Yeah, which I think is neat.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounds like poor Schmitty hasn't had a ton of luck with Swords Without Master. They said, my players had a really hard time doing cool things, and one of my players literally said they felt like they were cheating.
Oh, because the rogues phase.
Yeah. It's like,
show me a time when, show me how you sneak past all of the guards and open the gate for the rest of us.
Yeah, it sounds like they need to just have it better explained. Like, you are supposed to be telling an epic, cool story of how cool you are. So it's okay to do that.
Well, and so that's the challenge from going from a very traditional style role-playing game where it's like, okay, you need to make these checks to see if you can sneak past these guards, and like you need to make a check to see if you can open the door quietly, whatever, to having a game master basically say, show me how you did this awesome thing. Yeah. Right? And the thing about that is, like, the thing about the rogues phase is it's supposed to do two things. One, it shows off how awesome you are because you're supposed to be awesome rogues. But two, it's to advance the story without a lot of mechanical push. Yeah. Right? Like, it's supposed to get you to the next perilous phase. There's a thing about those three phases, the three basic phases, right? Discovery is supposed to help you figure out where to go. Rogue is to get you closer to the action. Yep. And then perilous is where there are stakes. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, it is tough if players have played a traditional game where they expect, like, I'm going to say a thing, then you're going to make me roll, then we're going to find out if I'm successful or not, as compared to being told, like, no, just tell me what awesome thing you did. Like, but especially be awesome about it.
Yes, exactly.
Very hippie.
Senda makes a great point too. There's a disconnect, really. For, on one hand, you're effortlessly doing a cool thing, but then you're also then having to describe how you struggle.
But you don't struggle in the rogues phase.
No, they're two different phases, but like you have to waffle back and forth between those two, and that can be a disconnect in processing.
Right, which is why this game is so much more about telling a great story than playing a game. Yeah. Right, because in a great story you talk about struggle and then how you overcome it. Where in a role-playing game, a random element determines our success and failure at most turns, right? And that's very different because you're playing from the dice, not playing from what's best for the story. And it is a shift, right? Like, it is not a game that it is a game that once people get it, they just love it. Like, I will go stretches where I haven't played Swords for a while, and then we'll run a session of it, and I'll be like, "Oh, right, I fucking love this game." Like, why do we ever stop playing this game? What is wrong with us? But it is a game you learn to play. Yeah.
Cool.
I still haven't played that with you guys yet either, by the way.
Oh, man,
we have to finagle that once we can get face-to-face again.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's what's going to happen. One night, we're going to have a blown session for one of our games, and I'll just run Swords. It requires almost no prep. Yep. It'll take me 5 minutes to remember how to run the phases, and we'll just do it on a blown game night. Yep. It'll happen. Like, sometime in the near future, somebody will be sick or something and won't be able to play DCC, and I'll be like, cool, I'm initiating a Swords Without Master game.
Boom.
Yeah. Coolness. Want to bounce to the corner?
Let's bounce it to the corner.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, I have a bumper for that. What? Hang on a half a second. Do. Boom. All right, let's do it. I'll start. So, brave Sir Percy has his eyes back.
Yay!
I don't.
Well, sort of yay.
On the one hand, it's like great for him to have his eyes back, but on the other hand, I can't do this anymore during the course of our game session and try and emote with my eyes.
I will admit, for the sessions that we did it was hilarious.
It was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun to do. But the players, the characters found a ritual that was designed to reconnect the eyes with the body, and we had to hunt down the reagent components that we needed. And then they did the ritual, and the scary part was that while the ritual was being undertaken, a bunch of monsters tried to attack us. So we had the mage trying to cast the ritual, and pretty much everybody else out trying to fight the monsters off to try and keep the mage from getting killed during the course of it. So
that was a fun
nice
evening
intense.
session.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a good session. Had a lot of fun.
It was good because I rolled for the random encounter because the ritual takes 30 minutes. So I was like, well, you're definitely pulling a random encounter.
Yeah.
So I rolled for it, and it's these little halfling hybrid things, and they themselves aren't tough, but they're also not dumb.
Yeah.
So after they realized how many of you there were, they just went to the other room and let the owl bear out.
Yep.
The owl bear.
Yes, the problem, the one that you shaved, which was, because you needed owl bear fur as part of the
owl bear fur,
yeah. But the owl bear was like in no mood for anybody's shit. So like it wasn't on their side. Like it just like came out and ate one of the halflings and then indiscriminately like started attacking everybody in the room. It was good. I had a lot of fun.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
As you can see, super close up.
Hey.
I had to clean up because I was super, super hobo Bob.
Oh boy, you were like that was,
which would have been appropriate for Murder Hobo Show Night, but
there's a whole lot of not shaven going on there.
It was to the point where it was just the mustache was hanging down and bugging my lip like crazy, and food getting in it, and I'm like, I can't take it anymore. So I had to clean that up. And it was super nice this afternoon, so I got out for a walk again. Walked like a little under 2 miles. It's like 1.8 or something like that, the course that I walk. So that was nice. Got a little exercise. I had to walk off Popeyes for lunch. I decided I was going to go to Popeyes to get a chicken sandwich, and that was all I was going to get was just a chicken sandwich. And then my ex was like, oh, are you going to Popeyes? Get me a chicken sandwich and a pie and a drink. And I'm like, all right. And then she's like, the girl working the counter was like, well,
don't ever fall for the 2 pies.
You could get 2 pies. And I'm like, I might as well get 2 pies. And then I'm like, throw a biscuit in there because I feel like having a biscuit. And then she ended up giving us really 2 biscuits.
Their biscuits
and I'm like, it's a good thing I'm not eating both biscuits, but yeah. So I ended up with a chicken sandwich, a biscuit, and a pie. But I knew I was having a light dinner. I had some crock pot chicken and rice, which was only 555 calories the way I made it. So I knew I wasn't, going to be super over for the day. So
that's good.
But that's another thing. Jerry reminded me I need to put my crock pot chicken and rice recipe in the recipe Slack channel in case anybody else wants it. It's super friggin' simple and it tastes good. So. Who's next?
Jerry.
I'll go.
Rock and roll.
I binge watched season one of Happy, and it was a lot of fun. Good fun show. Kind of got me kind of moving along in what was basically a very hectic week. Also watched season 1 of Tiger King, which just kept getting weirder and more exotic and bizarre. It is not for everybody, but if you like just weird, larger than life real stories, every episode is more absurd than the one before it. Had my whole week of online gaming where we did Monster of the Week last Monday, we did Scum and Villainy on Wednesday, and DCC on Thursday, and D&D Eberron on Friday. So that was a lot of fun. Ended up getting a lot of work stuff completed. I've been trying to get a bunch of things together for my job, and there's a lot of paperwork and things where you're just waiting for somebody else to get back to you with information. And yesterday I got 3 of the major work-related issues that have been hanging over my head for the last 2 weeks completed. So I came in today with just the normal everyday work-related tasks instead of, trying to negotiate with the government and deal with taxes and all the other fun stuff that goes along with the present situation we're in running a company. And lastly, Legos. I got an old set of Legos that I hadn't had for a while, that I never had as a kid. And when I got it, I built it when I was living in Auburn. And like 2 weeks later, there was a roof leak when I was out of town, and the whole thing got soaked. So I had to take it apart and demold it. So I got a new copy of that and put it together. And then while I was doing that, I dug out a box that I'd bought last year that had a bunch of just generic parts in it for different sets, and ended up building, I think, 7 old school Lego sets. That was very relaxing. It's something I do a lot to just unwind at the end of the day. And I like the aesthetic of some of the older Lego sets. I like the new Lego sets too. I like all the Lego sets. I'll be honest. Somebody gives me Legos, I'm not like, oh no, that's new. I don't want that.
But, oh no, I've seen your place. No.
Yes, but there's something about the design that they had back in the 70s and 80s when they were working with fewer parts and just going for very simple square designs. That Lego Space and Lego City had some very cool things, and it's also just fun to see the evolution. How they figured out how to make this work or that work or whatever. And,
I agree. I had a lot of Lego Space pieces, and they were cool. They weren't a lot of I've done new Lego builds with my kids, on newer stuff, and the number of specialized pieces is through the roof. When I was a kid, it was here's all the bricks. The most specialized piece you had was a window, or a windshield or something. And it was just the cool way you put it together to make a thing, which I think is kind of why I like Minecraft a lot.
Yeah. There's one of the things I found was during the Futuron series of Legos, which was Lego Space Series 5, give or take. I didn't have a lot of those sets when I was younger, but I started putting something together. And they were big on robots, and I ended up getting one of the sets built and then realized that the engines for the piece were actually robots that came off as part of the set. It was just something kind of neat. They also went for fewer pieces back then. You didn't have sets that had the 500-piece sets were really big, as opposed to today, those are the sets that are, yay big. When you had a truck or a spaceship, it might only have 30, 40 pieces altogether. And which also made it easy to build and nice for a little diversion. So anyway, that was what I do when I'm having a stressful week, is I Lego the heck out of it. So, and I still have a couple hundred unopened Lego boxes downstairs, so we'll keep doing that from time to time. So how about you, Phil? What'd you do this week?
Well, I got a much needed haircut with no hair places open. It was break out the wall clippers and do a brush cut, all clipper based. I think it came out great. I'm actually pretty thrilled. It's shorter than I normally like it, but honestly, I couldn't take my hair being long any longer, and so I'm digging it. It was really good. I kind of needed a little something. With everything else that's kind of out of control, it was really nice to just have a haircut. And my hair's really curly, so the longer it gets, the more out of control it looks, and the more I dislike it. So actually having a haircut that is under control felt really good. I played some DCC. That was a lot of fun. We talked about that in Bob's part. Had Misdirected Mark luncheon on Zoom on Friday, also really good. Did a lot of Minecraft, of course. No stopping on that. 5 episodes in on Picard, which I'm really enjoying quite a bit.
Yeah.
I just got through the one with 7 of 9 in it. Nice. That was good. Over the weekend, I watched Bloodsport with the boy. That was quite enjoyable. It's not any better than it was in the 80s. It's not any worse, but it's not any better. But he liked it. Although some of the martial arts in it are kind of ridiculous. And as a black belt, he's watching, he's what the hell is that fighting style? And I'm it's not real, buddy. Some of these are real, some of these are not. But it was good. I was glad to watch it with him. I have told him the next action movie that he is watching is Predator, because that's classic.
I watched Gymkata.
Oh no, I'm not watching Gymkata. I'm not forced.
This is like the third or fourth time in the last month that someone's brought up Gymkata, and I think we need a moratorium on that.
No, I'm going to escalate it. I'm not even going to. No moratorium. I'm going to throw the gauntlet down and challenge our brothers on the network to do a Zhang Hustle movie night for Gymkata.
Yes.
That is what needs. That's what needs to happen here is a full Zhang Hustle breakdown of Gymkata. All right. The other things I did, I played some more of that Star Traders Frontier game, flying around space, trading goods. That's pretty fun. I cleaned up a bunch of my gaming stuff over the weekend. I packed up a whole bunch of games off my gaming shelf. I moved a ton of games from my upstairs shelves to my downstairs shelves, cleaned up my upstairs shelf so that all the current games I'm playing are all shelved up there now, so that I can just go to my desk. Like I can get up from my desk, grab my DCC stuff and sit back down. And like I said, I boxed a lot of games. I think that I will probably get rid of a bunch of games. I think the games I'm going to just wind up keeping are games that I've played. So there's 3 categories. There's games I have yet to play that I still want to play. So I'm keeping those. There's games I've played that I want to keep because they're my souvenirs for playing those games. And I have a lot of those. And then I have a whole other pile of games that are games I own, I didn't play, and I'm pretty sure I'm never going to play. And I think I'm just going to part with those. I don't feel any reason to need to keep them. I will pass them by Jerry first in case there's anything Jerry wants to add to his collective. But after that, I'll throw them up on eBay or something like that. Like, for instance, I have like all the Decipher Star Trek books, which at the time years ago was quite a find to get them all at a reasonable cost, which I did. But I never wound up playing Decipher Trek. So I don't think I need to keep them. Like, if I'm going to go play Star Trek now, I'm going to probably just go play the new one, the 2D20 game. Yep. So anyway, I did a bunch of that cleaning, and I actually really like that because like now my gaming shelves look really good again, which I feel really good about. And then like lastly, like truthfully, like I'm still fighting some bouts of depression, just with what's going on in life. It comes and goes. It's not too persistent. The biggest problem I've been having is I've been having a lot of trouble sleeping, which it took me a while to kind of, with some help, to brainstorm through why I wasn't going to sleep at any reasonable time. But what I've kind of come to realize is that I haven't really given myself any time alone. I've been trying to be really present for a lot of people in a lot of different places. I'm hosting a luncheon with my work coworkers every Wednesday. I'm hosting the Misdirected Mark one on Fridays. Normally, like, lunch is a time where I unplug from everyone and kind of, just sit and watch videos or whatever. But, I'm putting 2 of those out to stay connected to people. I've felt a really strong need to be on Mumble in the evenings, right? Like there are times where I haven't really always felt like I wanted to get on Mumble or something, but kind of felt like I needed to be there because, other people are there, and just being available to other people, as they're going through all this as well. And so what I was doing was I was doing all that and staying up and hanging out with everybody. And then instead of going to bed, I was staying up till 3 a.m, watching TikTok videos. And it took me a while to realize that my problem was I wasn't spending any time on myself. So I'm going to do things a little differently this week. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to get off Minecraft at 1 o'clock and spend an hour reading or, comic books, whatever, until about 2. And I can actually go to bed at 2 because I'm sleeping till 7:30 because I'm not commuting anywhere. Yep. So I'm getting 5.5 hours of sleep, which is plenty for me if I actually go to bed at 2. So I'm going to try it out.
Thing, man.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was self-caring in that I was like, oh, I'm playing Minecraft, I'm self-caring, but like I'm playing Minecraft and being social. And like the thing I have to remember is that deep down inside, I'm an introvert, and I like not spending time with people. Not that I don't love all of you guys, but there's a part of me that loves to spend time alone, and I'm not doing that, right? In fact, I picked up an extra game a week because I'm playing Call of Cthulhu with Chris, which I really wanted to do because I don't get to see Chris very often. So I really wanted to do that. But like suddenly I'm like out everywhere. Like I'm in my house. Yeah. But I'm like on Zoom. Like I'm on Zoom almost every day of the week now. Like with the exception of like 2 days a week, I'm not on Zoom. Like I'm on Zoom every day of the week with people. And I love it. Don't get me wrong. I want to be there for people and I want to be connected to people, but I have been neglecting having actual alone time. So
yeah, you got to remember, Phil, when the oxygen mask drops from the ceiling, you put your mask on first, then you put the mask on for the person with you.
Yeah, I have not been doing that. And I think we both need to credit, isn't that Tony's rule, right? Oxygen mask rules apply here.
Yep.
Yeah, I have not been putting on my own. I've not been putting on my own oxygen mask. So, and I didn't realize it until like earlier this week. I mean, I realized like I've been sleeping like shit for weeks. Like I have everything else in my life locked down. I'm going to work. I am eating healthy food. My spending is mostly under control, but like I'm not fucking sleeping. Like I'm sleeping 4 hours or less a night. Like, because I'm still getting up and going to work in the morning. And, it's a mess. Like I'm kind of in a mess. And I, luckily have therapy this Thursday as well. So I'm kind of hoping that'll help. So anyway, I don't want to be a total downer because, other than having that problem, right? Other than doing that, like I have actually been able to, stay connected to everybody. And I am, I'm reading a couple games and I'm playing a lot of games and I'm healthy, right? Like I'm safe and I'm healthy and I'm financially okay. So like, it's not a like, woe is Phil thing, right? Like, it's just like there's a thing out of whack, right? And I know it because, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm watching fucking TikTok videos. Like clearly something's wrong. Yeah. Right? Like some introspection required. But yeah, I mean, you put it well, like it's the oxygen mask thing. Like I did not put my mask on first. Yep. Right. So, but yeah, so that's me. Are we at the anointed hour where we should proceed to the
hit the after show? I think so.
I think we like Patreon shout outs, Bob?
Yeah. Okay. So we've got Jen Pixelscapes Gagney, Jim Fitzpatrick, Joseph Peralta, Merrick Blackman, Mike Amer, Ninjabi, The Rainmaker, Richard Wayne, Rue Wayne, I almost blew that one, Rory McLeod, and Savannah Sizer. Thank you to all of you patrons, and thank you everyone for listening tonight.
If you are free on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's Time, come join us live on Twitch. Where you can hang out with the other awesome listeners in the chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
If you can't make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bonestone and Obsidian, Panda's Talking Games, The Gnomecast, John Who Hustle, She's a Super Geek, The FM Gamers, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have drawn your swords, but before you slaughter everyone mindlessly for treasure, pick that non-violent route and then leave us some feedback. You can reach us on the old-fashioned emails at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Hit us up on Twitter. The show, the network, is at misdirectedmark. That's Robert M. Everson. He's GM Gerrymander. And as always, I'm DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Down with D&D, and Panda's Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhang Hu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhang Hu Hustle. and bonus experiences at patreon.com/bonus experience. Patrons of MMP Down with D&D and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
Oh boy, I love when we have the actual mic here. We out.